Hey, Aaron, welcome to the show. As a way of getting started, tell us about yourself.
Well, Aaron Cullup, and I'm the Chief Sales Officer for PayPro, and we're headquartered in Atlanta. And I'm in the human capital management industry. So we handle payroll and human resource services, and we manage those for customers. And so I've been doing that for about 8 years. But got into sales actually in college. I started as a telemarketing agent. I don't know if you remember the company called MCI.
I do. Yeah.
MCI WorldCom, and I was a guy that called you at the dinner table at 6 o'clock at night and said, "Hey, I need to switch you from MCI to AT&T, your long distance service."
Yeah.
And so did that, and for about 3 or 4 years, and became a supervisor and managed some sales associates, and really began to cut my teeth in sales. And I realized that wow, I'm really actually pretty good at this, and I'm pretty good at this manager thing too. And I found that I had a knack for coaching and developing people, and really took a lot of satisfaction out of seeing others find success. And
Now,
so that was a springboard for my career. Go ahead.
I got to believe that's probably the hardest, other than door to door, right?
Yeah.
Calling, trying to
I
get
mean,
somebody to switch at dinner time.
you think about it. You remember how it was back in that time, and we're talking 1999 to 2003 roughly in my career. So yeah, you're calling people at dinner. You're on a speed dialer, so you're making 300 to 400 calls in a 5 to 6 hour span,
Wow.
right? Because if somebody doesn't answer, it just brings up the next one, and literally within a second, you're talking to somebody else. And so yeah, you're talking people. You're going to get cussed at and swore at, and people reject you all the time. And you really develop a tough skin, because you hear obviously a lot more no's than you do yes. And but I tell you, that was a foundational thing for me as far as learning how to be on the phones.
Yeah.
And learning how to pitch my product and how to build relationships on the phones, build rapport, which are some of the things that I think reps are finding a hard time nowadays. Is they're making phone calls and they sound very robotic. And it's just people aren't connecting to them. So how do you do that on a phone call? And I think it's really a lost art on the direct sales side, and something that we have to work on.
Yeah, I don't think it's taught. And I think just with the technology shift, a lot of people in their 20s never talk on the phone,
Right.
which is probably different than our generation. That was the only way you get a date. You couldn't text a girl when there was no texting.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
And if you think about it as well, yeah. And if you think about it as well, you think about back in our time. I mean, your sales manager used to say, "Hey, I want 50 calls a day."
Right.
Right. So now when you say that to somebody, it's hard to make 50 calls a day. And so and I still think that there's some value in that method. And obviously, we're shifting into more of a channel partner relationship method, referral partners, looking for that. And I think a lot of companies are kind of moving in that direction.
Yeah, I think the people who always do the best are the smartest, not just the grinders. The grinders do well, but that top rep usually does something very unique.
Yeah, the top reps, I'll tell you what separates the top rep, from the bottom rep sometimes is that margin can be very small. And, I watched a YouTube clip from Mark Williams, and it's called Just Do It from the 1987 press conference or conference he did with the press. And he talks about just doing it. He says, you know what? Sometimes that margin of winning is just so small. You put your pants on the same way, you go to work, you have this family, you have the same education, all this is the same, but the person that's making the 500,000 or more, makes money in a little bit more. He gets up early in a little bit more, right? I mean, he sells in a little bit more. He builds relationships in a little bit more. It's that extra effort, that ability to innovate, that ability to adapt. And honestly, I think that's what's really allowed our organization to be successful, is that ability to innovate. And we're really looking to try to find innovations that our competitors can't do, not just won't do.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's key to kind of give you that edge. And so we've been able to tap onto a few of those things. And it's really around how do we distribute our product? And for us, we're looking at more of that middleman model, which is finding a referral partner who has maybe a common enemy, a common goal. And we want to partner up with them and, possibly look at revenue shares and other things with them to incentivize them and bring them on as a 1099 salesperson for me. And so it's been a way we've expanded our sales force just by finding 1099 referral partners that are willing to refer for us.
And who are those? Are they like CPAs, or are they like consultants, or?
Yeah, I think in our industry, it can be all of those. It can be CPAs, it can be banks, it can be financial advisors, it can be insurance agencies, right? I think there are a host of channels that you could find that works for you. Some of our competitors have really hit on that CPA channel,
Yeah.
and they love that channel. That's not personally my favorite, but that's okay. It doesn't work for me, doesn't mean it won't work for you. And so, I think finding that channel partner that you really connect to, that really fits the visions of your company, is where you need to go. But I mean, honestly, Brian, when I got to PayPro in 2012, we were spinning our wheels, making 50 calls a day and, on the phones and doing that. And, I've watched some of your stuff and, closing, we can make up whatever number we want to on closing, right? I mean, I could say I'm closing at 80% or 100%.
Of course, right.
But let's just be honest. I mean, that way of selling, I mean, honestly, it was hard to get to 20%. I don't care what subjective number you meant. It was very difficult, in that environment to sell at a high rate. Now, when you're working through people with common goals and interests who have an incentive to work with you, there's a relationship. Right. So when I have a referral partner that's sending me their customer, right, and they're referring me in, the chance of me getting that sale is 50, 60, 70%. So now whatever number you want to throw out subjectively, bottom line is I'm closing more sales, I'm putting better numbers on the board, and I'm not working as hard. Yeah. I'm not making 50 calls a day. Not that you can't, but that's just what we see working well in the industry.
Right. And I think sales is much more of a judgment profession, judging what's the best use of your time to get the result that you want versus just random thinking that every opportunity is equal. It's not.
No, it's absolutely not. And, I think that you got to be smart as an A rep. And I think that you're right. Sometimes those lazy reps, you call them lazy, right? But they're selling, they're putting some big numbers up on the board. And, I think my approach is, if you want to work 20 hours a week, but you're delivering some big numbers and you have a way of doing that, that's wonderful. And so maybe you could do more, but at the end of the day, I think it's just being smart, working smart, not hard, and being adaptive and innovative. And I think that a lot of times that sales reps are kind of getting tucked into the mold and they're getting frustrated. In our industry, Brian, I mean, what I'm getting tired of is all the turnover. I mean, we just have a lot of turnover. Yeah. I mean, do you know how hard it is to find good salespeople and keep them? And it's really difficult.
They want to make money. They don't mind working hard, but they want the reward. They don't just want, the 50 or 100 calls or dials a day without the result.
That's absolutely right.
And too many people are playing the same playbook that doesn't match what they're doing, what they're selling.
That's absolutely right. And it's not just the sales reps' fault; it's the organizations too. So
it's mostly the organization, right?
Right. We're not training them like we should be. We're not giving them what they need to be successful, the tools that they need, and so it makes it very difficult for them to find stability and certainly. And so one of the things I think too that we can do as organizations is how we're compensating our sales reps, and looking at residual comp models versus one-time payout models to eliminate seasonality in sales. Yeah. I think that's something that's very innovative and is very smart. Now, not all companies can do that, but if you incent a rep, for instance, to get paid on an account for 3 or 4 or 5 years, and they're getting paid every month based on that billing, depending if that billing is recurring or not, that's motivating because everybody has a bad month. It's really easy to spend a $30,000 commission check. Okay, but the next month, if you don't have anything, what are you doing? You're not doing anything that month, right? And, or you might have 2 bad months and then you might have 1 big month again. Yeah. So I think what we're trying to do as an organization is find ways to incentivize a rep through compensation, looking at residual comp, potentially higher salaries, and I think that too, that compensation also affects, I believe, that rep's mindset when they're out there in the field, especially when it comes to being desperate. One of the things that I see personally is a lot of sales reps are so desperate for the sale, and you've got a lot of younger reps that are really trying to cut their teeth and they're really trying to make a sale and they want to put something on the books in 90 days and they're excited and they're passionate and they have all those things that you love about them. When they get in front of that prospect, boy, they're really driving hard. And instead of being able to sit back and do a takeaway and really relax.
Right. Because that's the opposite of building a relationship. It's all take.
Absolutely. And it comes across that way.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's not very genuine or authentic. And, at the end of the day, what I found is that people buy when they feel like you don't need them. And so, when we pull away, and that's kind of how we train our team, is that we're happy. We'll walk away from anything if it's not the right fit. And, we go on prospect meetings, we're interviewing them like they're interviewing us. And, it doesn't come from a place of arrogance. It comes from a place of genuine authenticity. How can we really help you? And I think the other thing that we're doing along with that is we really look at ourselves as educators versus consultants even, or salespeople. My job is to come in and educate you, what your options are. My job is to tell you how I'm different from my competitors. I didn't say better than my competitors. I said different. Yeah. You pick what's the best fit for your company, but I'll walk you through my perception of that. And it's really non-threatening and you see their body language adjust and you really focus on the relationship in that sale. and you're not trying to push or drive a product on them. But when you pull something off the table, boy, do they respond.
Yeah, because when you take that model, they're more open and honest with you about what they're thinking, because you know it well, but this might be the first time they've thought of it or heard of it. And
well, absolutely. I've got a great illustration of this. You'll love this. I'm meeting with a prospect, and so you've got 15 people in the room, and it's a company with several thousand employees, and I sit down at the table, and they're like, "Hey, where's your material? Right? Where's your PowerPoint, or where's all your marketing slicks and all of that?" And all I have is a notebook and a pen and some business cards, and of course I gave it all to them, and I said, "Well, I don't have any material." "Well, but your competitors all brought us all this stuff." And I said, "With all due respect, I'm not my competitors." I said, I different. And, I came today to have a conversation. I came today to try to find out what's going on with you guys, what your needs are, what your concerns or wants. I said, you probably have things that you don't even know are available to you that I can educate you on today. And so I wanted to have a back and forth. I went on your website. I did some homework. I've done my homework. I've prepared for this meeting. I've got 25 questions here that I have to ask, for you guys. I'm sure you have questions you want to ask me. I said, I think it'd be productive today, instead of me coming up and telling you all about my company and trying to ooh and ah you with the product set. Let me learn about your organization, and let's each ask our sets of questions. And if we decide at the end of this meeting that it's worth going to another meeting and that that's a good fit here, let's move to that next step. Let's see if it really makes sense for a fit, because I don't want to waste your time. You don't want to waste mine. Right? And so let's make this process productive. And after that meeting, pretty soon now I've developed that relationship. Whereas other sales reps came in and out, and they came in and they did their fancy stuff and they had big marketing budgets, and that's great. Okay, I came in and had a conversation, and so now I ended up winning that deal, and it was purely because they liked me, they trusted me. The products in our industry, the products are very commoditized.
Yeah.
Right. How hard it is to sell in a commoditized industry like payroll and human resources. Like we all offer very similar product sets.
That's it. You always seem to pick these hyper competitive markets.
Yeah, exactly.
Long distance service and HR and payroll.
Yeah. I forgot a long distance. I went into banking for a while, and that didn't work well for me, sitting at a desk 8 hours a day.
And that's it, because I think a lot of reps hear the word relationship, but they don't know what it means.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we just got on a call today and this morning with our sales team, and we were talking about some of the challenges they're facing. And all the reps are saying, I'm just, I go to these networking events and I'm not getting anything. And I was like, well, I don't ever get referrals after meeting somebody at a network event right away. They don't know me very well. They gave me a card. I said, the next step is you pick up the phone and say, hey, Jerry, I met you at this networking event. Really enjoyed talking to you. Why don't we go to Panera Bread and have a cup of coffee? If you really want to learn more about your company, maybe how I can serve you. Maybe there's something you can do for me or my customers. I really just think we need to kind of get to know each other a little bit better. And that second meeting is where that relationship begins, and you begin to learn, and you can possibly extract a referral. Maybe he's a referral that you can work with. Maybe he can put you in touch with somebody else. Yeah. But to me, what I like to do is I like to get people off their home turf, and their home turf is an office. Right. You catch me in my office with distractions. So you take me out for coffee though, and you've got me in a different mindset. It feels very different. Right. And I think that a lot of great business is done at the coffee shop now, where there are a lot of focus on relationships, and you're not pushing product, and you sit down and just have a conversation with somebody.
That's it. That strategy, I call that kind of the ecosystem strategy, where you try and understand who is touching that client.
Yes. Before
you, at the same time and after you, and how you can help them, not just how they can help you.
Well, that's exactly right. And, I tell this to our referral partners all the time, we go out there and we find referral partners refer us business. And I always tell them, really not interested in what we get out of it. More interested in you getting the business. If it's a mutual client or prospect we're going after, I'm only interested in what everybody else gets out of it. We're going to end up winning in the end. And so I'm not really pushing, our company's services on that partner. I'm looking to help others. And I think if you come in from that place and you're authentic and you're genuine, I think that's really what begins to translate for the prospect.
That's it. And people don't think that way. And I love the networking analogy, because what I used to do with like headhunters, which were part of my ecosystem, because they were talking to all my competitors. They knew them. They knew what deals they were working on.
Right.
They had their resume.
That's exactly right.
And I would get them all the referrals they want. And they go, how's he doing over there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Does he brag about any prospects or accounts?
Well, and I tell you, when it comes to having referrals nowadays, it's getting trickier and trickier. We're finding, because I'll give you an example. When you generate a referral partnership with somebody, trading referrals back and forth can get pretty tricky. Yeah. And the reason for that is, a lot of our partners the channel partners that we go after, they're like, what do you have to offer us? Because, for us, we do a revenue share, but a lot of our competitors will do hey, I'll give you one, you give me one. And I honestly, it just doesn't work, right? Because it just, for instance, you give me 2 referrals and I'm so thankful and I go out and close them. Now there is not equity between us. Now I feel indebted to you and I feel a lot of pressure that I've got to provide something to you. And so if I don't in 6 months to a year, you're going to call me up. Do you have anything I can work? I don't. The relationship is never in balance. So what I try to do, I think it's the best practice for salespeople, is I try to find a way to create an equity in a referral partnership. In our case, when we get a referral, we compensate that person for that. And I think that always makes sure that everything is in balance. If you can create that equity, I can tell you it generates a lot more business than if you're just trying to give back and et cetera, et cetera.
Right. It's not just referrals. A lot of times it's information.
That's a good point.
Intel. Mm-hmm. And a referral could just be, if I was you, I'd contact them. Right. They don't know me and I can't introduce you, but they're doing business. I know they are.
That's exactly right. And remember, they have relationships with their customers, right, and their clients, and they're advocating me, and they kind of have a feel for what's going on behind the scenes. And I always like considering myself kind of a CIA sales guy, because I love gathering information and intelligence. Yeah. And the more information we have, the more effective we are. And and I think that translated yesterday. I met with a prospect in Augusta, Georgia, and I met with their head CFO there. And our competitor went ahead and in one meeting put a price on the table and quoted it and did everything. And when I got in there, started my have a conversation meeting, I realized that there is so much going on here that this is going to take a whole year to iron out. And there's no way that this thing's going to close in a month. Right. And I told them, and their team doesn't get along at the upper levels. And I said, listen, I'll be that facilitator. I'll manage all the internal conflict. I said, but some people want to make a change, some don't. I said, let me manage those people. Let me take care of that. Let me help you guys. But I said, honestly, we have multiple meetings here. I need to investigate. I need to talk with certain people that handle payroll. I need to see how that works for a day or two. I need to go around and do a full analysis of your organization before we recommend a product. And our competitor who did that price quote for this company with 500 employees, what they're doing for the next month or two, every month or two, hey, when are you going to make a decision? Right? And, hey, how's it going? Right? They're not involved. I mean, they just went in and they tried to sell the deal. Yeah. And if you went in and listened to these people, there's so much that needs to be done to help their company. Yeah. And they really responded to that. And we began that relationship yesterday, and they trusted me. Right. And it wasn't, and so I'm willing to go a year on this deal. But see, that's going back to that whole desperate thing. Sometimes when you're salespeople and you're on commission, right, you want to get paid. And so you have a tendency to push and push and push. Right. And what does that go back to? Pipeline management.
Right, because there's no trust element in the dashboard on the manager's desktop.
Right.
only sees number of calls, demos, proposals, closed. And it's like, well, yeah. The people on the other end of that are people. And all the stuff you're talking about has nothing to do with a commodity. It has to do with solving their problem.
Well, think about it. In a commoditized industry, how are we going to be different?
Right.
Right. Because, it's all microeconomics and supply and demand. See, right now in payroll, I mean, you can choose from, 50 different, 60 different competitors. We're all the same, right? We all have payroll and HR and time and labor and all this great stuff. Okay. So it's a commodity. Well, what happens when it's great for the end user, because it helps drive prices down. Yeah. All right. So all this competition is driving, and we have competitors right now that are driving all of our prices down because they're undercutting us. Okay. And they're going in on price. Okay. Well, that's great for the end user. But what about, what makes us all different? So when you're buying a commodity, there has to be something that separates you. And at the end of the day, sometimes we go in and we say, listen, you've looked at 2 or 3 other providers. We're all offering similar products and services. And I'll ask them, how are you going to make a buying decision? Right? If all of our prices are the same and the value is determined as equal, right? Think about it. Right? If you buy something that has equal value and equal price and you have 3 different options, okay, how do you make a decision? It's difficult.
Flip a coin. But what they really do is who's going to help them solve the problem.
That's right. It's who they connect to.
Right.
Sometimes it comes down to that sales rep who's not a sales rep, and they trust and they have that connection. And so sometimes that's what makes the buying decision.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes another strategy we take, sometimes it is a price deal, right? Sometimes you get in there and your value of your products is equal. And what do? Well, sometimes if all the value is determined as equal between 3 or 4 options, you're going to take the lowest price. Okay, so that's what happens in a commoditized market, and that's what you get into. And that market share gets difficult to win.
But you'd be surprised that every market is that way from the customer's perspective. They want to commoditize us. That's how they get power.
Right.
You know?
Think about the capitalist. See, I'm a capitalist, so think about in our country, right? I love competition. I think it's great for our economy, you know. But companies want to be monopolies, and companies want you to be commoditized, right? So, I mean, I'm talking about the end user, the prospects. Right. Like they love the commodity, they love the price war, they love everybody kind of fighting over it. They think that's fantastic. But then you want somebody like a Google and some of these other guys, they want to be a monopoly where they can charge whatever they want to. Right. And so in our industry, it's that constant as we're building technology, everybody's looking for that greatest, newest thing to shift the supply and demand model. Yep. Right. So if I come out with something groundbreaking in my tech that our competitors don't have, guess what? You know, demand for my product goes up. Okay. And so that now I can begin to charge whatever I want to. And customers don't like that, you know, and so they love the new technology. But you know, they want to commoditize that.
Control.
They want the control.
Right.
So it's real interesting to see what's happening nowadays.
And that's it, because your job and my job is to differentiate off of what you can do for them, how well you understand their problem, and how you can solve that problem.
Right.
Not that they're all equal.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, you know what takes the pressure off is the pipeline management. So going back to our discussion here, you know, of how we can be successful as salespeople, you know, the other day, you know, a rep contacted me and he lost a deal and he was all down in the dumps. And I'm like, well, how's your pipeline? You know, and, you know, it's not very good, you know, because he got excited. He put 5 new opportunities in there. And as a couple of them were dropping out, he's really struggling. And I said, listen, right now, I would be shrugging that one off. If you had 20 other opportunities, who cares? And I said, what happens is as you build your pipeline, when you start sitting in front of customers, you don't feel the pressure. You're not worried. If it drops out, and sometimes it legitimately drops out. You know, the other day, I lost a deal to a competitor, and we just weren't the best fit. You know, but, you know, as I was in that room, I actually pushed them in the other direction. You know, as we began to talk and I said, you know, honestly, I don't have the best solution for you. I honestly think that company does. I really think you need to go in that direction. I would hate to bring you on board and you not be satisfied and you end up leaving me anyway or getting upset. I just don't feel comfortable, you know, with us being, and I said, I'm actually going to withdraw our proposal from consideration. And I think you're better off in that direction. The lady was floored.
Right. They don't know how to react.
Expect that.
Yeah.
She did not know how to react. And she was like, well, you guys don't want our business. I said, it's not that I don't want your business. I don't feel like we're the right fit for you.
Yeah.
Okay. And vice versa. So I got to do what's best for you. And I said, yeah, you guys would be a great account for us, but it's just not under these circumstances, it's not the right fit. And you know what that does? Now all of a sudden they want me, right? Now all of a sudden, when you pull that off the table, it's like, well, you know, could we do a workaround? Could you guys do this or that? Could we look at some other solutions? You know, do you think that maybe you could do that? And so now they're re-engaging.
Right.
And it's amazing when you begin to do what's right for people, how they trust you and they re-engage. And it really changes the nature of the sale.
That is the acid test of trust, is do you have their interest above your own?
Correct. That's exactly right.
Right.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That's the flip. As soon as you demonstrate that, you've got trust. Until that, they assume your interest is above theirs, and they don't trust you.
Yeah, it's always true. And sometimes you have to educate a buyer, Brian, because they forget sometimes when you're talking to a decision maker, they forget what it's like to be salespeople.
Yeah.
And so the other day I was talking with a business owner, and he's in there, he's chopping me down on price, and I'm not budging on my price. So I said to him, Mr. Business Owner, I said, let me ask you a question, right? In your industry, are you the highest or are you the lowest priced, competitor in your market? He's like, we're really kind of in the upper middle. We're not too cheap. I said, well, so am I. I said, I'm not the highest. I'm not the lowest priced. I'm doing what you're doing. I said, I have a profit margin to keep, right? And I've got employees to feed, and we've got, mouths to feed and families and all of that. We want to be successful, but we also believe that our price is commensurate to the value that we're providing you. And in our industry, you get what you pay for, right? And I said, so we're just like you. And so if you have a sales rep that comes up to you and says, hey boss, we've got to cut this thing down by 30%. What are you doing? Right? You're not happy about that. You don't want to do that. Okay. Well, it's the same thing here. And he started dying laughing. He's like, I just didn't even think about it that way. And I said, we're the same as you. We both want to make money. We believe we have a good product for you and it fits. He's like, all right. He says, I'm good. Let's move forward. Yeah. And it was no longer about, hey, let me, chip $20,000 off the deal. So sometimes people forget how they even run their own businesses.
And it becomes an academic exercise, and it's always fun to try and get that last pound of flesh.
Yeah. Right? Yeah.
Now,
it is.
I got to believe in your industry, it's like, how do you determine what to work on? Because you're not the biggest player in the space, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's true. And so, for us, again, I think it's going back to, in our industry, what's great is that every company is a prospect. Right. So anybody that does payroll, as long as people are working for people, you have HR, right? And as long as people are getting paid, you have payroll. And nowadays, over half of U.S. businesses are outsourcing that function. And so for us, we're industry agnostic. We don't really care whether you're, do concrete or you're sitting in an office and you're in an IT tech firm. And so to locate that end user, that's why we really target those referral sources that can bring us into that. And, I'll tell you, your phone and email start ringing once you engage a referral source. So we went from 0 referral sources in 2014 to 500 in 5 years, right? That we put under contract as 1099, referral sources for us. And so now if you think about that regularly, phones ringing, emails are coming in with opportunities, and we're not really doing much other than focusing on the wholesale part of that, which is meeting with that distribution source, meeting with that partner. So a lot of our sales reps are going out and taking those people out for coffee and lunch to get their customers and not focusing as much on the end user and spinning your wheels. And they're closing at higher rates because they're building trust and relationships with the referral sources. And so what we find is that after the second or third meeting with a referral source, they really begin to open up the pocketbook and begin to refer business. And then it's like a waterfall. Now, the more of those you get, it just begins to open up and you get new business right and left. So it's been great for us. It's been a good model. And I think it's a model that other organizations can employ in any industry, is really finding a good channel partner, that you're a vertical that you can target and really align yourself with.
That's it, because they know who's in market.
Right.
At that time.
That's exactly right.
And you could either go and try and find that needle in the haystack, mm-hmm. or talk to somebody who already knows where the needle is.
Yeah. I just think in 2020, it's tough to sit a rep and sit down and make 30, 40 phone calls a day. I get it. Some industries, you got to do that. I'm not taking any value away from phone calls. You and I were chatting a little bit that I think it's hard in sales to be dogmatic. And what I mean by that is what works for me. A lot of people that watch this, it doesn't work for you.
Yeah.
Right. And you're going to say, this Aaron guy, he doesn't, that doesn't work for me. And I think that's baloney. But there may be people out there there's value in what we're saying. I think there's some common guiding principles that we got to latch onto. And that is, how in 2020 do we work smarter and not harder? Right. And we've got too many reps that are turning over because they're spinning their wheels on the phones. And I think you need to have a balanced approach. Right. There's nothing wrong with picking up the phone and calling the end user direct to sell your product. I think that's healthy. Or doing door to door, or doing some of those things if that works for you. Okay, but I think you got to work smarter and look for some referral sources as well.
Yeah, you have to have that detective mindset. Is like, who is most likely going to be interested and who knows them?
Exactly.
Right.
That's exactly right.
Because if there's a crime, who do you talk to? You don't talk to just anyone. Right?
That's true. Yeah.
Just have a survey on the street. Hey, did you see anything last night?
Yeah.
No, you could talk to the neighbors as close as possible when you circle out. Who has the motive?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Otherwise, you'd never find anybody.
Yeah. And, that I think that honestly, that's what's really changing the game, for our company and in our industry. And I think for several others, right, is finding those referral sources, especially when you work in a city like Atlanta, right? So,
right.
Atlanta's a big city. It really comes down to who you know and having relationships. And, think about getting any good job anymore. It's kind of who you know, not what you know. And,
I hear somebody, I sent my resume in online. I go,
right.
Yeah, that's going to get you nowhere.
Right. Yeah. I tell you, I read Ken Coleman's book, and he's a Dave Ramsey personality. He talks about how to find a job. And I think it's great for salespeople. I think that's what you do. Example, this is how you use LinkedIn to be real powerful as a sales manager. I believe a good sales manager always has 4 or 5 recruits in his back pocket.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think LinkedIn is a great tool for that, where you're reaching out to people and you're saying, hey, this may not be the right time, but love to talk with you at some point about another opportunity. And, I want the people that are happy where they're at now. Those are the people I want to talk to because they're performing, they're A players. And my job is to persuade or sell them on why working for my company is going to be better for their career.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that it's very valuable to have that in play.
Great. Hey, it's been a fun conversation. Where can people go to connect with you?
Definitely on LinkedIn right here. And also, you can hit me up on my email address at acullup@payprohcs.com.